I'm going to find out which brand makes the best tape measure. I bought 13 brand new tape measures here, and we're going to put these head to head to find out the most accurate and the most durable tape measure. Alright, so the most expensive tape we're going to be looking at is Lufkin's Shock Force. This tape costs $38.95 AUD, and a few features it has is firstly it's got the double-sided tape, so you get the measurements on the back. It also has an auto lock feature, meaning the tape won't reel back until you push down that button, and you got to hold this button down and the tape comes back. It's definitely something a bit interesting, something I'm not used to, and I don't know if it's something I actually like. It's really not that hard to lock a tape into place anyway, and it seems like it's just going to be a lot more effort every time you do a measurement to have to go there and pull the tape back. I don't think I'm a fan of that feature. Now this tape has been labelled to be drop tested up to 36 metres, it's got a wider, thicker blade, and we've got 5 metre reach, which we will be testing that feature. Now the second most expensive tape is Milwaukee's tape. And this Milwaukee tape costs $35.90. This tape also has measurements on both sides, and it's also got a little slot in the bottom here, so you can stop and move and alter the tape measure with your finger at the bottom there. I've also never used a tape with a finger stopper feature like this before, and this is a feature I think I'm actually going to be a fan of. I can see this being really useful. And on this package, Milwaukee state that this tape can stand out to 4.2 metres. It also says it's got an impact resistant frame, but it doesn't say what height you can drop this from, so we will be testing that later too. Next up, we have Dewalt, costing $34.95. This tape is also double-sided. One cool thing about this tape is that it comes with a feature you can clip onto the tape. It comes with a removable magnet, which you can put onto the front of the tape there, and that will obviously lock into anything magnetic and hold your tape in place. Dewalt do state that this has a 4.9 metre reach, and this has been drop tested from up to 30 metres. Empire's tape costs $29.98, and like all the tapes so far, this also has double-sided measurements, and similar to the Milwaukee, we have this easy stop there for your finger. Now we're not starting the review yet, but I do actually want to comment saying that Milwaukee's finger stop feels a lot better than this Empire's tape. Milwaukee's one I can easily put my finger on it. This one I need a bit more pressure, I almost need to crank the tape to lock it in place. Empire state this tape has a reach of up to 3 metres, and they've commented that it has a reinforced frame, but they don't give us a height that it's been drop tested from. At $29, we've got Stanley's Fat Max tape. This is a tape I'm used to, which I've been using a lot. This only has measurements on the one side though, and Stanley's Fat Max tape has a 3.3 metre standout. For $24.95, we've got King Chrome's tape. This King Chrome tape does have numbers on both sides, and it also does have that easy stop at the bottom there. And this finger stop is quite similar to Empire's, that you do need a bit of pressure to activate it. King Chrome state that it's got a 3.2 metre standout, and it's got anti-tear coating reinforcing on the tape, but they don't say anything about this tape being drop tested. For $19.95, we've got another Lufkin tape, and this is the Fluoro Lock. This tape has deliberately been made at 90 degrees, so you can butt this up to an object and add on the width of the tape to any measurement. I don't know how handy that feature would be, but they do state that. Now in features, Lufkin has said that this tape is a nylon bright colour, so that it does stand out in your toolbox. And this tape only has the measurements on one side of the tape. Now for the same price at $19.95, we've got Wolf's tape. And this tape has the measurements on both sides of the tape. This tape also comes with a lanyard to hold around your wrist if you want to, but apart from that, it doesn't have any standout features. For $17.98, we've got another Stanley tape. This Stanley tape also has a finger lock. And I will say this one is pretty similar to Milwaukee's, that it is very easy to use. And we can see as well that it does have the measurements on both sides of the tape. For $14.98, we've got this Trojan tape. This tape only has measurements on one side of the blade. For $12.15, we've got this Bacho tape. It's a bit of a unique design, and this also has the measurements just on one side of the tape. For $9.98, we've got yet another Stanley tape, a bit of a cheaper alternative. This one's only got the measurements on one side of the tape, and also has no special standout features. And the cheapest tape we're going to be looking at is this Craftright tape. This tape costs $4.98. It's also got the measurements on one side of the tape, and I've accidentally bought a tape that has both imperial and metric measurements. That's not part of this video, I've just bought the wrong tape for this test. Now the first test we're going to do is checking how accurate these tapes are. There's actually going to be two different parts to this test. I've opened them all up, and the first part is we're going to hook over the sheet and measure across, and hopefully all the measurements are the same. So that first test is going to be hooking over something, and the second test we're going to butt into something. If you don't know this, the reason the ends of your tapes move back and forth is to compensate for the thickness of the end of the tape. You can see the end of this Dewalt tape is roughly 1 mil thick, meaning that if I butted into something and the tape didn't pull back, the measurement's going to be off by 1 mil. So we are going to be testing to see how accurate these tapes are at moving back backwards and forwards to give us an accurate measurement. Now this is probably the most basic test we're going to do, but it's also the most important. If you buy a tape and it's not giving you an accurate measurement, straight off the bat, doesn't matter how durable, doesn't matter how good the tape is, you can't use it. So this is going to be really important. Let's see how they go. So we may as well start with this Dewalt tape, and we're going to hook them over, and I'm actually just going to roughly mark this so we know that we're hooking them in the same spot. And I want to do a very detailed, accurate mark here at 400 millimeters. We can see that mark there is right on 400 mil. Hopefully all these tapes say the same thing. Next up, we're going to try Stanley's Fatmax, and that is accurate on 400 mil. We'll do Stanley's Control Lock. That's also accurate on 400 mil. We'll do the cheapest version of Stanley's tape, and that is also accurate on 400 mil. Next up, we've got Milwaukee, which is perfect. We've got the Trojan wide blade, which honestly, this one looks like it's about half a mil off. Not the biggest deal, but that is actually slightly off. Depending on what work you're doing, if you're doing framing, half a mil, you'll probably get away with it. But most finished clean carpentry work you're going to be doing, half a mil can actually make a bit of a difference. So it's not a good start for the Trojan. We're going to keep testing it, but it's not a good start. Kin Chrome, which is perfect. Empire, which is also perfect. Wolf, which is also good. Our Lufkin Shock Force, which is also good. I keep forgetting, I've got to push that down to retract the tape. I definitely don't like that. We got the Lufkin Fluorolock, which is also good. Second last tape we've got is the Bacho, and that one is good. And then the cheapest tape of the lot, the Craftright. And I'm reading this one on the other side of the tape just to get the metric reading. But this one is actually half a mil off, which isn't great, but it's kind of what you expect when you get a tape for $5. All right, so now we're going to test the tapes the other way by butting them into something. We'll butt them into this bottom plate, do a mark, and test them the exact same way. All right, I'm going to zoom in a bit closer for this test so it's a bit easier to see. And we'll do the same thing. We'll mark exactly where the tape's going to butt in, which is here. And we'll start with the Dewalt to get the first mark. I'm going to butt the tape in there, and this time I'm just going to mark 200 mil, so it's just a little bit easier to see. And we can see this line, it's roughly a mil thick, but it's from the 200 mil mark and on, so we'll make sure that lines up with the rest of the tapes. We'll go through the Stanley tapes again. This is the Stanley Fatmax. That is perfect. We got the Stanley Control Lock. That tape also works out pretty well. We got the cheapest Stanley tape, and that tape is also working out pretty well. We'll jump over to the Milwaukee tape. I'm happy with that reading. We've got the Lufkin Shock Force. That also gives us a good reading. We got the Lufkin Fluorolock. Also gives us a good reading. The Wolf tape also gives us a good reading. Kin Chrome also gives us a good reading. The Empire tape also gives us a good reading. The Trojan tape gives a good reading. Bacho gives a good reading. And the Craftright gives a good reading. So for that test, butting into an object, every single one of those tapes gave the exact same reading, which is a good sign. With those tests done, we can start jumping into some of the fun practical tests to see how good these tapes are. I've jumped downstairs into a room which is quite sheltered from the wind, and the next test I want to do is by seeing how far I can extend the tape without it breaking and falling down. Obviously there's a few brands we've looked at and they've told us what the tape can extend to, so we're going to fact check that, and for the brands that haven't told us, we're going to have a look and see how good these tapes are. We're not going to do this in any particular order. We've just got a box full of tapes and we're just going to pick whichever one is on top and start with the Milwaukee in this case. All right, so what I'm going to do is just keep extending this tape out. To keep the test fair, I'm going to extend my arm as far as I can and try to hold all these tapes the same for every single test. When the tape gets to a point and it falls down, I'm going to lock my finger on the blade, check what the measurement is, and I'm going to do this 3 times per tape, just in case any wind or anything came that influenced the test. I'm just going to keep my arm split. Oh. That first test was 5-2-40. Pull it back in, and as I said, we're going to do this 2 more times, take our time and go slow with all of them. 5-1-80, we'll keep the first measure. The first test was the best. Milwaukee got 5-2-40. Just to keep it interesting, every time we go through a tape, I'm going to extend it at its max reach, leave it on the ground here, and we'll get a good representation on how good each tape is at the end of this. All right, so next up, we've got Lufkin's Fluorolock. This tape already feels very flimsy, and I want to make sure when it feels like it's going to go that I'm only doing very slow, small movements, so I don't pull it out drastically and alter the results on how far we actually got. So I'm just going to keep going very slow here. Obviously at max reach to keep it fair, and this is going to go any second. 3,745. All right, next up, we've got Stanley Fat Max. $4,805. All right, the Stanley control lock. This tape feels very flimsy. I'm actually surprised we got this far. 3,750. That's actually given us millimeter perfect 3,750 for both tests we've done. At least it's consistent. Let's go for a third, see if we can get it again. I can't even make that up. It's got 3,740 for that third test. So all three tests with this tape were within 10 mil. It's very consistent. All right, Bacho. We've got 3,570 for the Bacho tape. Woof. $3,730. Got the Dewalt tape. $5,240 for the Dewalt. I'm holding that exactly where it broke, $5,240. And if you remember, that's exactly what Milwaukee got. So right now, I can't make this up. Right now, they are tied millimeter for perfect. We still got 2 more attempts with Dewalt though. 5,430, is that? That is the record, wow. All right, Dewalt takes first place. We just got 5,430 with that go. Wow, that's actually pretty good. This should be a good one. This is Craftright, the cheapest tape. This was a $5 tape. And it actually feels a lot better than some of the other tapes we've used, to be honest. We got 3,385. So even though it feels better, it's not necessarily doing better. 3,410. It's going to finish on 3,410. Empire's tape. $4,150. Oh, I got the King Chrome tape. $4,330, but that's actually broken in a way where, did that work? Yeah, I could fix it in my hands. Oh, still landed on 4,330 though. All right, so we've got 2 tapes left. We've got the Trojan wide blade and the most expensive one, the Trojan and Lufkin shock force. We're gonna leave the most expensive to the end. We'll keep it interesting. Let's see how this wide blade one goes. So far, out of every single test we've done, the wide blade tapes obviously have been the stronger ones that have got the better result. So let's see how this wide blade tape goes. Not too good. All right, we've got 3,660. And final attempt. 3,725, we'll take that. All right, before we do test the most expensive tape, let's have a look at all the other tapes so far and see what's going on. So they're all butted up against the wall. And in last place, we've got the cheapest Stanley tape. Right next to it, we've actually got the cheapest tape of the lot, which is a Craftright. They're pretty close to each other. For the most part, one thing we can notice is the thinner tapes are obviously the weaker ones. A lot of those tapes haven't finished too well. We've got the Trojan wide blade and the Wolf, and they are both thicker blades, and they both got around the 3,738 mark. So I feel like this is genuinely where most of the tapes are. A bit better than the rest, we've got the Empire. A step up from that, we've got the King Chrome, and that's pretty close to the Stanley Fat Max. And the one thing we did see when we're testing them, so Milwaukee did really well, but so far the Dewalt is a leader at 5,430. So let's see if that can knock down the Dewalt and beat that. It's feeling really good so far. I don't know what we're at. 5 meters 80. Okay, so we're gonna need, oh yeah, I really don't like how that reels back in, but we're gonna need to get another 400 mil out of this tape for it to be the best. Oh, don't break. Around that 5 meter mark again. That time we got 4.8. I mean, so we did keep getting 5 meters of reach, and it is advertised at 5 meters of reach. So at least it is pretty honest. And we'll compare it to the rest of the tapes here. It is going to beat the Stanley, and it is going to finish 5 meters 80. Oh, gotta pull that back in. It's going to finish right there, just behind the Milwaukee. All right, so this is a really good test that we did right there to see how handy these tapes will be when you're using them on site. Obviously, a tape that can extend further, closer to that 5 meter mark, is going to be really beneficial when you're trying to get those long measurements. Obviously, all the tapes that did well, we can kind of group these together, a few 100 mil here or there. It's not going to make a big difference. But now I do want to start getting rough with these tapes, trying to break a few of these tapes and see how durable they are. All right, I've climbed up the scaffold. We are currently 7 meters up from the ground. And you've guessed it, I'm going to go through all these tapes. And I'm going to drop them down from up here, all the way down to that gravel, and see if they break. Obviously, a lot of these premium tapes that say they've been drop tested for up to 36 meters, they should be fine. If they break on this test, very concerning. But we're definitely looking at some of these cheaper tapes and trying to see how they go in the drop test. These are the ones I'm more worried about. And let's just start with the cheapest tape right now and let's see if it breaks. I don't want to run up and down after every single test, so we're just going to drop every single tape and then see how they go. Alright, we've got all the tapes here. Obviously there's a bit of dirt on them, but from first glance, I think every single tape looks like it's alright. Is the Milwaukee tape broken? Nah. Alright, we're good. That was a bit of a false little scare there. Alright, we do have what seems to be an issue with the cheap Craftright tape. That is pulled back all the way and it's actually not retracting back in. All right, we've got something there. It will go in, but we can see even there it's sticking out a bit. It is starting to struggle after that drop test. Apart from that though, every other tape seems to be in good condition. So I think that means we've got to think of some tougher tests to put these tapes under. So obviously it would have been very disappointing if these tapes properly broke after one drop from that height. It's not great, but you do expect to drop your tapes quite a few times while using them. So I'm trying to think of tests that can really accelerate the stress that these tapes go under. And I think I've got a test that might just do that. I think you can see where we're going with this test. Obviously it's not the most accurate thing. The most accurate test would just to be standing there, dropping them hundreds of times. But we are going to test how strong they are built. There's going to be a lot of weight going over these tapes, and hopefully I don't puncture a tire. Okay, we've definitely done some damage. The king chrome tape is cooked. That's not going to work anymore. That is a write-off. It's our first broken tape. Look, there's a little bit of damage there. We can see the housing's broken a little bit. That's still pretty good. Alright, so the Bacho tape still works. We can see the housing is very damaged though. But at least the tape still measures, comes back, still does what it needs to do. Here's the cheapest tape of the lot. the Craftright. We had some issues from the drop test, and yeah, those issues have become worse. That tape will not retract now. And the Milwaukee, it's good as new. So honestly, from that test, mainly only the king chrome and the Bacho tape broke. Not too worried about that, but the king chrome tape actually felt like really good quality. And that, yeah, that is completely broken. The tyre seems okay. That's probably the one thing I should have checked on first. Alright, so we've done a few tests now to test the actual bodies. To test the bodies of these tapes. The next test I want to do though is to see how strong the actual tapes are. Alright, so we're going to start with the Empire, and what I'm going to do for this test is firstly clamp it to the stud here. I'm going to pull out 1500 of the tape and lock it in place. With this tape locked in place, we're going to start twisting it and see if the tape is going to spring back to how it's meant to be, or if this is going to alter the tape. I'm going to count how many twists we do and make sure we do the exact same test for every single tape. We're going to unlock the tape, I'm going to let it go back home, and now the test is it going to be straight when we pull it out? Alright, so I'm locking this on the meter mark right now. You can see how I'm holding the tape. It is plumb, it is straight, and you can see the end of the tape is twisted on what looks to be a 30-degree angle. Now the reason we're testing this is sometimes when you throw your tapes out and they bend and break, they might fold over, and I've had it over the course of months that tapes will start to bend, and when the tape itself isn't thick, it's going to start to bend in an angle like this, and this means once you start to extend it, it's not as strong as it used to be, and it's going to be easier to fall over to the side that it's facing and break on you. This Empire tape, it's not great, it's still going to be usable though with that 30-degree bend, but any tape that does any more than that, sometimes they fall over on themselves. I've had it happen before, and you can't use that tape anymore. Next up, Trojan. 1, 2, 3, 4, 29, 30. Alright, that didn't look too good. And yeah, that bend isn't great. This Trojan tape has a 70 to 80 degree bend at the end there. Alright, Stanley Fat Max. 3, 4, 5, 6, 27, 28, 29, 30. That isn't great by the Fat Max. It's about 85 degrees. Alright, Stanley control lock, 30. Alright, so the Stanley control lock is the first tape that has completely failed that test. So far the tapes we've tested, they've obviously haven't been great. They've got a bit of a bend in the end of the tape, but the Stanley control lock has bent so far that when I pull out the tape, we'll go to a meter, it's just going to fall over and collapse on itself. I might struggle to get this tape out. We will go for the cheap $5 Craftright though, and 30. I think the Craftright $5 tape has done the best so far in this test. I mean, it's still pretty broken from the last test we've done. I can't really push the tape back in. All right, next up, Milwaukee, 30. Wow, okay. All right. Milwaukee has done the worst yet. So if I pull that out to about 400 mil, that's already almost done a 360 on itself, falling over. In comparison, the Stanley control lock, it's not great, but that's about 500 mil right there, and it's only about 90 degrees. I got to go out a bit further before it starts to turn and fall over on itself. This has surprised me. Before this test, I was actually thinking that Milwaukee could be in the running for being the best tape you could get. And now having a look at the performance from the tape from that test, oh, that's not looking too good. I'm going to try the king chrome. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get the tape back in. It is still pretty damaged from driving over it. All right, we can see the same thing with king chrome. I'm just supporting it there, but if I hold it upright, it's basically exactly 90 degrees. That does mean though, if I continue to pull this tape out, it's just going to keep turning over, and it's a write-off. Next up, we've got the Bacho tape. Before I even start twisting this tape, the feel for this tape, it feels super thin, super flimsy. I'm expecting this to be one of the worst tests so far. 30. Alright, I'm wrong once again. These cheap, small, flimsy tapes actually seem to be doing really well in this test. Guessing the reason for that could be that the tapes are smaller, they can curve around more times than the thicker tapes. Also means that it's easier for me to bend these tapes around. So to actually have the same amount of pressure on the tapes, I would actually need to twist the smaller tapes around even more times than the larger tapes. Since the larger tapes are wider, they are thicker. In the real world, they're not going to bend around as many times as I'm doing right there. So in this test, we almost need to look at the thicker tapes and the smaller tapes in separate categories. But we can see with the Stanley control lock and this Bacho tape, they are pretty much the exact same size, and the Bacho has definitely outstood Stanley in this test. Let's try out Lufkin's Shock Force, the most expensive tape. Now this tape is the same size as the Milwaukee's tape, which failed the test, but it's also the same size as the Stanley tape, which should do pretty well in the test. So let's see how this goes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's actually a bit of an issue with this tape here. Every tape, obviously you lock down into place, but this Shock Force tape, it automatically locks and you got to press down to retract it, meaning that every tape I'll lock at 1500 and I can't pull out. Yet this tape, I can keep pulling it in and out when I want. I don't like that. You can't actually lock your tape off of the measurement. I do not like this feature at all. I'm gonna have to think of another way to test this tape though. I'm just gonna pull the tape out about 20 mil past 1500, and I'm gonna try clamp it on here. So we can see the clamp there, and that 1500 mark is at the start of the clamp, so we're still going to be twisting the same length of the tape. 26, 27, this tape is struggling. 28, 29, 30. Alright, let's pull it back in. Let's see how she went. Alright, so not great. I'm just going to keep it perfectly level and keep extending it until we get to the point where it falls like that. Try that again, but I want to compare this in the Milwaukee and see which tape came out better. Getting about 1200 on this tape. Okay, I forgot how bad the Milwaukee was. I thought they were going to be close. I forgot the Milwaukee can't go any more than 400 without twisting over. So it's done a lot better than Milwaukee. Alright, so another one of the expensive tapes. It's done really well so far. We've got the Dewalt. It's actually probably the best tape so far out of the lot. And it's got the same thickness as all those other expensive tapes, such as the Stanley, the Shock Force, and the Milwaukee. Let's see how this one goes. Alright, put it back in. It's not looking great. The Dewalt's definitely finishing off in between the Milwaukee and the Lufkin. We've got 3 more tapes to go. Let's quickly see how these ones turn out. We've got the Fluorolock tape, and it actually won't lock anymore. This must be an issue that came from all the drop tests we've done, but we actually can't lock that tape into place. All right, so we're gonna have to use a clamp again to hold that in place. We wanna leave that there. We don't wanna pull it anymore. And let's see how it goes. Has not done too well on that test either. We'll try out Stanley's cheaper tape. All right. We've got probably about a 20-degree of an angle there. It's actually done really well there. All right, the last tape we're going to test is the Wolf, and it's also another one of the thicker blades. 29, 30. That's actually remarkably, oh, I spoke a bit too quick. That's pretty good. It's pretty good. Yeah, we can see once we start to get towards, I'm at 1400 now. If we go a bit more to that 1500 mark, it's not too bad. Probably closer to 2 meters, it's when it starts to tip over. Or maybe not. We got to 3 meters before that snapped. We can see it does have that bend. It looks like the bend's not going to be too much though to really alter the results we get from this tape. Right, so having a look at the tapes now, these are all the thin bladed tapes, and up here, these are the thicker tapes that we had. Now going off the reach test, I believe these tapes here, and from memory, I'm pretty sure it was a kin chrome with the Stanley Fatmax, Lufkin Shock Force, Dewalt and Milwaukee that all seem to do the best on the Standout reach test. Unfortunately, the kin chrome did fail the body test. If you were using this tape, you just want to make sure you don't leave it on the road. It doesn't do too well when a car drives over it. So in terms of the testing today, this is out of the talks, but I do want to be very clear, with any test we do, there are heaps of different variables. There could be so many different things that alter these tests. This tape could have been hit by a tire on a certain angle that made it break. To get proper results, I'd want to be testing hundreds of tapes, which we obviously don't have the capacity to be doing for this video. From the 4 tapes though that I've done so far in this test, I've actually ranked them in where they went in the previous test that we just did then. Obviously Milwaukee was the worst, DeWalt wasn't too great, and the Crescent Lufkin Shock Force and the Stanley Fatmax are the 2 tapes that did the best. And testing aside, these are the 2 tapes I see the most on the work sites. And after all the testing that we've done, it has shown why these are the 2 tapes we see everywhere. Obviously that's not a lot to go off. People are just going to be used to using what they use, what their bosses use. So if a tape's everywhere on site, people are just going to follow habit and normally use the same tapes. Now, a couple of things we didn't really look at while testing these tapes is firstly the numbers and the markings and how easy it is to read these measurements. We can see both tapes are very clear, easy to read markings. The one thing I really love seeing are those longer lines at every 5mm interval. A thing that does get extra points though is a Crescent Lufkin tape does have the measurements on both sides. This comes really handy in so many different instances. For example, I could be on a ladder right here looking at these posies, and I might be underneath one, wanting to hook up onto one and get a measurement. It's going to be a bit hard to do now after we've bent all these tapes. But we do have little tongs that stick out from the top of the tape here, and it means I can hook onto something from the top of the tape. Stanley, it's got something slightly there that you could use, but I don't think it's there as much as an intentional feature as this tape, because obviously you can hook up that way, and you can also look up and read the measurements from the bottom. When I have used the Crescent Lufkin tapes, that has come in handy quite a few times, and this isn't something that I can really prove in the video, but from my experience using various tapes, the Stanley Fatmax seems to be the most consistent tape. That's why I do see a lot of people using these tapes on the work site. They're not really pimped up with any fancy features, but they're just there to get the job done and last. And I do think this test really does reflect that and reflects why everyone does seem to be using these tapes. Now with all that testing done, if anyone wants to buy a half price, half broken tape, please let me know.